Many of us have experienced one time or another being prejudged and/or humiliated. And when we lacked the discipline to let such cases roll off our shoulders, chances are we either became depressed or lashed out in anger. Some of us may have even plotted and executed vengeful plans to get even with the perpetrator. Have you ever gotten over these traumatic events? Well, in Masamune-kun's Revenge, one character seems to have kept a childhood chip on his shoulder. So what can we learn from them? Welcome to Life Lessons in Anime. Masamune-kun's Revenge is a Japanese manga series written by Hazuki Takeoka and illustrated by Teve. It was adapted into an anime and aired in 2017, produced by Silver Link and directed by Mirai Minato, with Michiko Yokote supervising the scripts. As of the release of this video, there appears to be no indication of a sequel. The story revolves around high school student Masamune Makabe, who is seeking emotional revenge on popular female student Aki Adagaki. In his earlier childhood, it is alleged that Masamune was emotionally abused by Aki for his overweight appearance. And after intense training and dieting and reaching high school age, Masamune plans to use his improved body structure and charisma to win Aki's heart, but then reject her in the same cruel mannerisms she did in the past toward him. Many of us are aware that vengeance is pointless, but let's break it down. Number 1. Prejudice is not only immature, but it can also be a symptom to underlying mental conditions within the host. Upon looking up the definitions of prejudice, there appears to be a common description between them, thereby stating, quote, the feeling of like or dislike for someone or something, especially when it's not reasonable or logical. In the instance of scenes within this anime, actions of the characters often fit the negative portion of the definition. Prejudice can be developed in a host either by inexperience, brainwashing, or by traumatic experiences. In the first episode of the series involving the high school tennis club, Masamune was looking at the female student athletes in a checking them out type of mannerism, and by his own internal monologue, admitted to viewing the female student athletes with impure thoughts. However, those student athletes called out to another male student who was holding up their smartphone and accused him of capturing media footage of them. If the male student was doing that, it would be a violation of the student athlete's privacy. This could very well be the primary factor why the female student athletes confronted the male student to begin with. But Masamune's particular gesture when looking at the female student athletes could also be questionable. And as the interaction between the female student athletes and Masamune continued, with just one compliment, the student athletes were somewhat entranced by him. Of course, this is all scripted, but there are cases where prejudice of this type does occur. The observing party could even be completely innocent and express a genuine compliment, and some recipients, if they do not like the complimenter, may resort to humiliating mannerisms toward them, but will gladly accept the same type of compliments from someone they do like. Judging someone for consideration of general interaction by appearance alone is a major misconception of facts regarding them. It is more important to consider the individual's character, to which one common red flag of character is one being nice and accommodating to people they do like, and condemning and humiliating towards those they don't like when such persons have done nothing wrong, criminally nor morally. The other side of the coin, in which the behavior being a symptom, can be found with Aki Adagaki. Aki apparently suffered an event in the past involving guys, and appears to have yet to heal from it. Because of this, she has a perception that all guys are no good. However, she takes it a step further and significantly humiliates any male individual who proposes to date her, assigns them derogatory nicknames, and even rejects compliments from them. While it is unfortunate when we suffer traumatic events with others, using negative mannerisms toward others in an attempt to avoid the pain of a repeating scenario causes more problems than it actually solves. It is similar to trying to make others who had nothing to do with the original cause pay for the actual individual's transgressions. to which we ourselves would not hesitate to protest if we were handled in that same manner. Number 2. Evil actions such as humiliating mannerisms, bullying, narcissism, etc. have consequences. Every action warrants a reaction, and they are not limited to justice. They can also take the form of unjust actions. Actions like these not only can get you disciplined, they can also get you seriously injured or even killed. One male student proposed to Aki for consideration of a relationship. However, Aki rejected the request and again resorted to public humiliation. The peer pressure from the incident and lack of emotional resilience by the male student led to extreme anger, which unfortunately boiled over, and the male student proceeded to assault Aki with a deadly weapon. This is something that can happen when you push issues like these too far. Rejecting someone is one thing, but humiliating them within that rejection is beyond reason. While it was wrong of the male student to attack Aki, Aki is not innocent. Aki's actions consisted of verbal and emotional abuse. And what's worse, none of the bystanders throughout the series ever called her out on it, especially the female students who embraced the behavior. This is also a case of what is known as hypocrisy. Unjust actions have been an issue since the beginning of man, and in those incidents, one side or another had the dominance and were turning a blind eye to such actions, and even swept them under the rug. But with the field becoming more leveled out, there are growing cases where some who were once oppressed are now engaging under the same umbrella of evil mannerisms and are turning a blind eye themselves, or even attempting to justify such actions. Therefore, the question is warranted: is it really about justice and equality, or is it actually about gaining dominance and control? And one of the main reasons why those involved on either side turn a blind eye is often because they are benefiting from it. The reality is there are discrepancies on both sides. No means no, and nobody should be putting their hands on anyone unwelcomingly and/or inappropriately. The bottom line, when we all maintain the discipline of treating others with mutual respect, only then will we be on the right track to peace. It is not one-sided. Number 3. The mindset of revenge is a path to self-destruction. You run the risk of becoming just like your aggressor. Whenever we have been wronged, the common knee-jerk reaction is to reciprocate the same action the perpetrator enacted towards us. If you are not yet developed in the discipline of introspection, and if you are still in a state of insecurity, the common thought process is to recover whatever dignity you can, even if it is questionable in morality, which can lead to the next risk. You will attempt to justify your desire for revenge with anything you believe will stick. You could be doing the same thing as your aggressor, but because of the pain you suffered, you end up claiming the necessity for you to be given a pass for exercising such actions. However, let that scenario be the other way around and you be the non-prevailing party. You will most likely claim how flawed that kind of logic is. Vengeance is not concerned about what is logical or reasonable. It's only concerned with obtaining what it wants in that period of time of its manifest, which leads to the next risk. Revenge is a waste of your resources. You will find yourself exhausting everything you have: your time, your energy, your finances, your equipment, even those you hold close. If you are severely entranced into revenge and anyone attempts to introduce more reasonable alternatives, you may even find yourself perceiving them as an enemy. All of that just to get back at someone on mainly a theory, which ends up warranting the next risk. There is no guarantee the revenge plan you formulate will work. The common goal for a plan of revenge is to induce suffering on the target. But there is no guarantee the target will actually remain in the agony if successful in fulfilling the task. And when the target ends up showing resilience and recovers from your acts of revenge, or in some cases is no longer having to deal with the challenges of life, you may find yourself experiencing the next risk. There is no guarantee you will feel better after completing the task of revenge. One case in this is when the target actually corrects their own misconduct before you could execute your plan. Masamune got a glimpse of this when he saw Aki interacting nicely with another male student who was on the, quote, chubby side, to which Masamune became enraged. Even though self-correction is one of the best courses of action to assist with healing from misconduct, in the mind of one fixed on revenge, this will not be good enough. You may even find yourself trying to find every reason possible to invalidate the efforts of the correction. And in the case in which you don't feel better afterwards, whether your plan worked or not, as the adrenaline and first knee-jerk reactions wear off, you may find yourself wrestling with the next risk. You will have multiple battles with your conscience. Unless you are on the level of a psychopath, this is likely to happen. There are cases you will even question whether justice truly exists. But what justice are you referring to? Or could it be you actually redefine justice to suit your own vendetta? And if your own personal definition is not fulfilled, you may conclude that justice does not exist, become even angrier, and attempt to suppress your conscience, to which you will end up wanting to satisfy your desire to see your perpetrator suffer even more, which leads to one more risk noted in this video. You risk neglecting your own health. With all the rest of the factors involved, you may end up at a point that all you want is for that perpetrator to feel your wrath. You may enter into poor eating habits, consuming violent material to feed your anger, surrounding yourself in violent atmospheres, substance abuse, physical abuse, the list goes on. All of this in the hopes that your target will get a glimpse of what they did to you, which there is no guarantee they will come to that understanding, even after all of that. What you will have been doing is destroying yourself, expecting them to notice. But the reality is, which is the final lesson in this video, if you have suffered any social, emotional, or mental trauma, seek to heal from it. This may be as simple as genuine peer coaching, or it may require professional assistance. But you need to seek true, genuine, proper healing. This is the case for both Masamune and Aki. Masamune literally devoted his life to making Aki suffer the same emotional trauma he suffered from her. And instead of moving on or getting help to move on, he chose to live in the past. In the present time of the anime, Aki is not even able to emotionally harm him anymore. There may have even been a chance that if the two of them crossed paths naturally and he identified himself and she remembered him, he could have easily said that he would prefer not to be involved with her as he does not trust her. At the same time, with her current attitude, she most likely would have brushed off his statement. But strategies like that are 4 times more effective than life-compromising ones. Some of us may just be in that kind of status. We eagerly wait for the moment we can tell a person how we feel in the most dramatic way possible. But really all we are doing is harming ourselves with the excessive forms of stress and the release of stress hormones, which can eventually cause permanent biological damage. Meanwhile, Aki is also trying to avoid her past by engaging in humiliating mannerisms as a defense mechanism, but she is in fact keeping herself in the past by doing so. Some of us may operate in the same mannerism. We hurt others to avoid being hurt. In some cases, because an action from another resembles the previous action, we become triggered and lash out. But then in some cases, we come to find out the motive of that new person's actions were not even the same as the previous. So then we drew blood from an innocent. We do not have to live this way. I have discovered one of the reasons why we don't seek genuine healing is because of our inexperience. Many of us have more experience in conflict, pain, and havoc than we do in healing and rehabilitation, in resolve. One common reason for that is botched upbringings. The very people who were our prime examples in dealing with conflicts oftentimes showed us how to handle them aggressively and even in manipulative ways. So for many of us, that's all we know. When we are introduced to healing and rehabilitation, it's often viewed as weakness. But what is so weak about letting go of what holds us down? What is so taboo about wanting to be stable? So we have two options. We can either explore the procedures in healing or reject the process and continue in the past. But in order to heal, it requires us to let go of certain things. You have to be tired of being angry. You must let go of replaying the negative events of the past. You must let go of the task you don't have the authority to do, which is disciplining or punishing your perpetrator. There is a difference between defending yourself and punishing someone. You must refocus your gravitation from the elements that only provide temporary relief and make the things that will actually cure you the primary factor. Some of us only want relief, while some are not ready for the cure, and that's usually driven by pride. One concept that is heard of, but oftentimes misunderstood, is forgiveness. Forgiveness does not mean we are giving the offender a pass, nor does it equal condoning the offense. Forgiveness is releasing ourselves from the negative mental effects of the offense. When we have unforgiveness in our hearts, all of the traits of revenge are its byproduct. And looking at all of the self-destruction it does, is forgiveness really that bad? Even in the anime with Masamune, he committed unjustified acts toward Aki, which Aki's associates witnessed, and it gave him a bad image. Is unforgiveness really worth all of that for you? Can you really say, with the evidence thereof, that unforgiveness can bring you true peace? Or is it actually a mental prison that you just sit in with the door wide open for you to freely leave, but you don't? Forgiveness is really for you. Forgiveness is really for the one who was victimized, not for the perpetrator. It does not mean you have to forget, but learn from those incidents so you know how to avoid them in the future. It also does not mean you have to socialize with the perpetrator thereafter, as the trust is not there. It just means that you release yourself from the responsibility you don't have to punish them. As said before, there is a difference between self-defense and punishment. So I encourage you to consider forgiveness. Free your mind from the past you may be holding on to. If you can do that on your own, great. If you need to get help, and do it for you. Develop yourself positively and grow into a better person. Learn from Masamune and Aki and be better. The methods someone uses to disrespect us is their accountability. How we process it and what we do to ourselves in response to it is our responsibility. Only we can control how we operate. And guess what? The greatest revenge we can actually obtain is by progressing in our own life purpose and be successful in it. And doing that for ourselves. It is not our job to punish those who have harmed us. We are able to defend ourselves from immediate threats that jeopardize our safety, but babysitting the perpetrator with vengeful actions and in an authority we don't have is out of the question. Some of you who may watch this anime and may have watched this anime, you may have been expecting Aki to be emotionally abused just as she did to others. But how does that by itself fix the problem? Understand that the negative behaviors by both of these characters are symptoms. The underlying cause is unresolved pain, to which they are brainwashed by common worldly, prideful, temporary pleasures, when in reality, those behaviors only sustain the problem. They don't solve it. So how can we claim to be better than our perpetrator when we commit actions that sustain the known problems? See, too many times we get so fixed on revenge and punishment that we neglect to even consider rehabilitation, not just for them, but also for ourselves. Those who look like they feel good about the havoc they're causing, it's just a mask. They are actually paranoid inside. So let go of that desire for revenge. Instead, pursue to heal and rehabilitate, pursuing your life's purpose. Let's all do our part to break this cycle of dysfunction. Are there some lessons in this anime you noticed? You're invited to share them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like is greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to see more and you haven't done so already, I encourage you to subscribe and activate notifications to be informed of the next productions to be released. Life is full of lessons, and although we might not be perfect, we are capable of improving. So until next time, keep learning and stay wise.